Imagine for a moment that you are standing on a cold stone platform surrounded by a thick fog that seems to swallow reality itself. We are in Denmark at Elsinore Castle in the late 16th century. The wind howls with a fury that feels almost human, and the silence of the night is broken only by the rhythmic footsteps of the guards. But this is not a peaceful silence. It is a silence of anticipation, a tension that precedes the storm. This is how one of the most important works in human history begins, a piece that not only transformed theater but forever altered our understanding of the human psyche. To talk about the tragedy of Hamlet, Prince of Denmark, written by William Shakespeare around the year 1601, is not simply to talk about a play about a prince seeking revenge. It is to dive into an ocean of doubt, existential philosophy, and the eternal struggle between thought and action. To understand why this text continues to resonate so powerfully in the 21st century, we must strip it of its armor as an untouchable classic and look it straight in the eye, just as Hamlet looks at Yorick's skull. Shakespeare wrote this play during a time of brutal transition. The world was leaving behind medieval thought, where fate was written by God and the social order was immovable, to enter the modernity of the Renaissance, where the individual begins to question their place in the universe. The author, a man who knew the shadows of the soul like no other, took an old Scandinavian legend about a young man named Hamlet and turned it into a laboratory of consciousness. But before dissecting its darkest themes, we must walk the path of its story, a plot that pulses with the urgency of a suspense thriller. The action kicks off with a kingdom in crisis. King Hamlet has recently died, and in a move that defies all logic of respect and mourning, his brother Claudius has married the widowed queen, Gertrude, and claimed the throne. Young Prince Hamlet returns from his studies at the University of Wittenberg to find a home he no longer recognizes, a place where the air reeks of betrayal and political convenience. The appearance of the late king's ghost is the catalyst that breaks the balance. This specter is not just a horror device, it is the incarnation of an uncomfortable truth demanding to be heard. The ghost reveals to Hamlet that he did not die of natural causes but was murdered by his own brother, who poured poison into his ear while he slept. The mission he is given is clear but devastating: revenge. From this point on, any other hero of the era would have drawn his sword and sought immediate justice. But Hamlet is not a conventional hero. Hamlet is an intellectual, a man who thinks too much for his own good. Here is born the central conflict that moves every gear of the play: paralysis by analysis. Hamlet decides to feign madness to observe the movements of the court without raising suspicion, creating a mask that, over time, becomes indistinguishable from his true face. This decision to fake insanity leads us into a labyrinth of mirrors. Hamlet begins to treat those he once loved with cruelty, especially young Ophelia, the daughter of the Lord Chamberlain Polonius. The relationship between Hamlet and Ophelia is one of the most tragic subplots in world theater, representing the destruction of innocence under the weight of adult power games. Meanwhile, the prince seeks proof of his uncle's guilt. The word of a ghost is not enough for him, as it could well be a demon sent to tempt him. Here we see Shakespeare's modernity. Hamlet demands empirical evidence. He then organizes a theatrical performance within the play itself, a piece called The Murder of Gonzago, modified by himself to reflect his father's crime. This is the famous concept of the play within a play. Hamlet says that the play is the thing wherein he'll catch the conscience of the king, and it works. Upon seeing the reenactment of the poisoning, Claudius stands up disturbed and leaves the room, confirming his guilt. However, despite having the proof he sought, Hamlet continues to hesitate. He finds Claudius praying, alone and vulnerable, but decides not to kill him at that moment because he fears that if he dies in a state of confession, his soul will go to heaven. This procrastination is the fatal error that triggers the cascade of bodies that defines the end of the play. In a tension-filled confrontation in his mother's bedroom, Hamlet accidentally kills Polonius, who was hiding behind a curtain spying on the conversation. This impulsive act marks the point of no return. Hamlet is sent to England to be executed, but he manages to escape and return to Denmark, only to find that the world he left behind has completely crumbled. Ophelia, broken by the grief of her father's death and Hamlet's rejection, has drowned in a river. Her brother Laertes returns thirsty for blood to avenge his family, becoming Hamlet's dark reflection, a man of action who does not hesitate to get his hands dirty. The climax of the play is a fencing duel that is, in reality, a death trap orchestrated by Claudius and Laertes. The latter's sword is poisoned, as is a cup of wine intended for Hamlet. In a choreography of errors and fate, Queen Gertrude drinks the poison by accident. Laertes and Hamlet wound each other with the lethal blade, and finally, before drawing his last breath, Hamlet manages to kill Claudius. The stage is left covered with royal bodies, symbolizing the total collapse of a monarchy rotten to its core. But the true weight of Hamlet does not lie in this body count, but in what happens inside the prince's head between each act of violence. To understand this deeply, we must look at the psychological structure of the character and the themes Shakespeare planted in the text. A deep deconstruction of Hamlet forces us to talk about melancholy. In the 17th century, melancholy was seen as an imbalance of the body's humors, but Shakespeare elevates it to an existential condition. Hamlet wears black not just because he is mourning his father, but because his soul is tinted by a darkness that the outside world cannot comprehend. Modern psychologists often debate whether Hamlet suffered from clinical depression or if his behavior was purely strategic. What is certain is that Shakespeare captures with terrifying precision the sense of emptiness that accompanies the loss of meaning. The famous "to be or not to be" soliloquy is not simply a question about ending one's own life, though it contains much of that. It is a reflection on the burden of existence. Hamlet wonders if it is nobler to suffer the blows of fortune or to end them by opposing them. Here, Shakespeare puts into words the universal human dilemma, the fear of the unknown after death, that undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveler returns. This fear of death is inevitably connected to the symbolism of the skull. In the fifth act, when Hamlet holds the skull of Yorick, the jester who made him laugh as a child, one of the most iconic images of Western culture is produced. It is a reminder that regardless of our wealth, our intelligence, or our power, we all end up as dust. This idea, known as memento mori, or remember you will die, is analyzed by Shakespeare not with religious resignation, but with an almost scientific and macabre curiosity. Hamlet imagines that the remains of Alexander the Great might today be plugging a beer barrel to keep the air out. It is an absolute democratization of mortality that must have been shocking to the audience of his time. But the complexity of Hamlet is not exhausted by death. We must also consider the perspective of deep psychology, specifically the interpretation made by Sigmund Freud at the beginning of the 20th century. Freud suggested that Hamlet's inability to kill Claudius was not due to cowardice, but because Claudius had fulfilled Hamlet's own repressed desires to kill the father and possess the mother. This famous Oedipus complex adds a layer of discomfort and depth to the scenes between Hamlet and Gertrude. The prince's obsession with his mother's sexual life, his verbal attacks charged with almost erotic violence, and his disgust at the idea of marriage suggest a psyche fractured by conflicts that go beyond politics. It is not just that the throne has been stolen, it is that the natural order of his affections has been profaned. This leads us to analyze the role of women in the play, a crucial aspect for understanding Shakespeare's legacy. Both Gertrude and Ophelia are characters who have often been interpreted as passive victims, but a modern gaze reveals much more. Ophelia represents the destruction of identity under the patriarchy. She is forced to obey her father, her brother, and her prince, losing her own voice in the process. Her madness is not just a dramatic device, it is a form of protest, the only space where she can tell the truth through songs and flowers before being swallowed by the water. On the other hand, Gertrude is a fascinating mystery. Did she know about the murder? Did she marry Claudius out of ambition, desire, or pure political survival? Shakespeare leaves these questions open, allowing each generation of actresses and directors to find their own answer. Another fundamental pillar supporting this immense narrative construction is the concept of surveillance. Denmark is described by Hamlet as a prison, and Elsinore Castle is a place where the walls have ears. There are spies everywhere. Polonius behind the tapestries, Hamlet's old friends Rosencrantz and Guildenstern acting as the king's informants, and even Hamlet himself spying on the consciences of others through theater. This environment of constant paranoia resonates surprisingly well with our current concerns about privacy and digital surveillance. Shakespeare understood centuries before the invention of cameras that living under the constant gaze of others alters the very essence of our identity. Hamlet is forced to act in the dramatic sense of the term because he knows there is always an audience watching him. This connection to the modern world is what allows us to transition toward the play's current relevance. Why do we keep watching Hamlet? Why have thousands of film versions been made, from classic interpretations to adaptations in space or corporate worlds? The answer is that Hamlet is the first character in literature to possess an infinite interiority. Before him, fictional characters tended to be types: the brave warrior, the evil villain, the pure maiden. Hamlet is everything and nothing at once. He is cruel and tender, wise and erratic, cynical and a dreamer. In his internal struggle, we see the reflection of our own battles with indecision in the information age. Today, we have access to infinite data, infinite options, and we often find ourselves paralyzed, unable to take a clear direction, just like the prince. Even in the fields of neuroscience and artificial intelligence, studies have been conducted on Hamlet's thought patterns. Some experts suggest that his language, full of wordplay, complex metaphors, and logical leaps, mimics the way a hyperactive mind tries to process massive trauma. His monologues are not just speeches for the audience, they are thought processes in real time, a stream of consciousness that anticipates by centuries the literary technique of authors like James Joyce or Virginia Woolf. Hamlet doesn't tell us what he feels, he shows us what it feels like to think. The influence of this work on popular culture is so vast that sometimes we aren't even aware of it. From The Lion King, which is essentially a version of Hamlet for children, to phrases we use daily like "something is rotten in the state of Denmark" or "the rest is silence." Shakespeare has shaped our language and our way of structuring drama. But beyond the quotes, what endures is the figure of the intellectual facing the corruption of power. Hamlet is the man who refuses to accept the official lies of the state, the man who prefers the painful truth over the comfort of ignorance. In a world where post-truth and media manipulation are commonplace, Hamlet's insistence on discovering what lies behind appearances is more necessary than ever. To further deepen this deconstruction, we must consider the nature of the ghost. In Shakespeare's time, the existence of spirits was a subject of intense theological debate. For a Catholic, the ghost could be a soul in purgatory seeking redemption. For a Protestant, purgatory did not exist, so any appearance had to be a demon in disguise leading man to perdition. Hamlet finds himself caught in this religious crossroads. His doubt is not just psychological, it is metaphysical. If he kills Claudius based on the word of an apparition, he could be condemning his own soul to hell for all eternity. This spiritual dimension adds a weight of gravity that is often lost in purely secular readings of the work. It is not just his life that is at stake, it is his transcendental destiny. This leads us to reflect on the end of the play and its ultimate message. When Hamlet dies, his last words are, "The rest is silence." It is an enigmatic closing that has generated entire libraries of interpretation. Does it mean that after death there is nothing? Or that human language has reached its limit and cannot express the magnitude of the experience? What is certain is that Shakespeare does not offer us a happy ending or a simple moral. There is no reward for virtue nor a punishment that restores perfect order. Fortinbras, the Norwegian prince who arrives at the end to claim the empty throne, represents the wheel of history that keeps turning, indifferent to individual tragedies. Life goes on, but the world has changed forever because of Hamlet's passage. Looking at the play in its entirety, we understand that Hamlet is a mirror that reflects our own fragility. It is a meditation on honesty in a world of masks, on the search for justice in a corrupt system, and on the struggle to find a purpose when death seems to be the only logical conclusion. Shakespeare's greatness lies not in giving us answers, but in asking us the right questions with a verbal beauty that takes our breath away. Every paragraph of this work is charged with an intention that goes beyond entertainment. It seeks to shake the foundations of our certainty. It is amazing to think how a man who lived more than 400 years ago could capture the essence of contemporary anxiety with such precision. Hamlet is, in many ways, the first modern man, the first to feel alienated from his society, the first to question his own identity, and the first to understand that language is a tool for both revealing and concealing the truth. By studying this work, we are not simply performing an exercise in literary archaeology, we are conducting an autopsy of the human condition. At this point in our analysis, we must understand that Hamlet's relevance will not fade as long as there are human beings capable of doubting. The play teaches us that doubt is not a sign of weakness, but a mark of deep humanity. Only those who dare to doubt can aspire to an authentic understanding of reality. Hamlet fails in his mission of swift revenge, yes, but he triumphs in his mission of exploring the limits of thought. His failure as a soldier is his victory as a philosopher. Through the decades, we have seen Hamlet played by men and women of all races and ages in every possible language. Each new version discovers a new facet of the diamond. It is a living text that breathes and adapts to the scars of each era. In history's moments of greatest crisis, Hamlet has returned to the stage to remind us that although the world is out of joint, the integrity of the individual and the search for truth remain the only possible beacons in the fog. To understand this fully, we must look toward the last moments of the prince's life, where he seems to reach a strange peace. Before the final duel, Hamlet says there is a special providence in the fall of a sparrow. He has stopped trying to control every detail of his fate and has accepted that there are forces beyond his understanding. This acceptance is not a surrender, but a form of higher wisdom. It is the recognition that although we cannot choose the circumstances into which we are born or the traumas that hit us, we can choose the dignity with which we face our end. This reflection leads us inevitably to the conclusion of our journey through the halls of Elsinore. William Shakespeare's Hamlet is not just a play, it is a testament to the human capacity for introspection and wonder. It reminds us that we are creatures made of the same stuff as dreams, and our little life is rounded with a sleep. As the book closes or the stage lights fade, what remains is not just the memory of a bloody story, but the resonance of a voice speaking to us from the past, telling us that we are not alone in our uncertainty. In the great tapestry of universal literature, Hamlet shines with a dark and persistent light. It is the reminder that being human is a difficult task, full of contradictions and pain, but also of incomparable intellectual beauty. Shakespeare gave us this broken compass so that we might learn to navigate our own internal chaos. And so, while the rest may be silence, we will continue to speak, think, and feel through the words of the Prince of Denmark. I hope this journey through the shadows and lights of Hamlet has served to illuminate not only the work, but also some corners of your own reflection. The story of Hamlet belongs to all of us because we all, at some point, have felt that time is out of joint and that we were born to try to set it right. Thank you for joining me in this deep analysis. We will meet again in the next exploration of the great mysteries that the written word has left for us throughout the centuries. The rest indeed is silence.